Only a few years in, and this decade is already shaping up to be a classic. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 horror movies from the first half of the 2010s. For this list, we're looking at recent entries into the horror canon that are standing up gorgeously next to their classic counterparts and quickly redefining the genre.
Nancy?
Once again, we're omitting comedies or action adventures with some horror elements in them, like World War Z. This is part of a series of videos spanning the decades of horror cinema, from the 1920s to the 2000s. Number 10. Oculus. A major critical and financial success, Oculus was something new and fresh for horror fans.
We have to kill that thing. For Mom and Dad.
As torture porn was dying away, fans were looking for more haunted house dread and atmosphere, as well as less gory set pieces.
We made up a scary story so we wouldn't have to accept the fact that our father was a murderer. He was. He was a sick man who tortured and killed our...
The flick follows the original story of two siblings convinced that a mirror is responsible for many deaths, including those of their parents, as they attempt a series of experiments to prove it.
Kaylee.
Jumping back and forth in timelines gives the audience the same dizzying, sickening feeling the victims of the Oculus go through, and sucks us in for good.
It wasn't me, it was the mirror! It was the mirror!
Please, please, you have to believe me! Number 9. The Crazies.
Let's go! The Crazies!
At a time when no classic horror movie was immune to the ridiculous remake machine, fans groaned at the news that George A. Romero's B-movie The Crazies would not be one of them. So boy, was everyone surprised in 2010. This critical and box office success, about a town slowly getting infected with a virus that turns you violent towards your loved ones, surpassed the original in more ways than one.
Any crazies back there in Babcock?
Leaving behind B-movie campiness and upping the ante on apocalyptic, all-too-realistic dread and drama, this little gem gave the decade a well-deserved confidence boost.
I did. I shot him. Yes! Baby, I shot him! Look at me, you crazy bitch!
Number 8. Let Me In.
Are you a little girl? Huh? Are you scared?
What was going to be yet another victim of the remake machine turned into another surprise hit. The original Swedish production of Let the Right One In was such a rich and intimate take on a horrific subject that its American counterpart was rushed into production. But in the expert hands of artists who respect the medium and the source material, it became something new. Following the same arc of a bullied boy who befriends his young neighbor / vampire friend, Let Me In deserved to be shared with a wider audience. Number 7. The Woman in Black. With The Woman in Black, Hammer Films announced its triumphant return to horror cinema.
I saw a woman there.
Having redefined what horror could be in the 1960s, here they go back to their gothic ghost story roots. Old mansions, creepy children, foggy landscapes.
Please don't go back to Aylmarsh House.
Why?
Based on a brilliant novel by Susan Hill, and with a surprising starring role by Daniel Radcliffe, fresh off Harry Potter fame, this story of a young lawyer snooping around old estates and finding the vengeful spirit of the Woman in Black may seem old school, but scared the living daylights out of audiences.
She saw you. She's coming.
Number 6. Sinister.
Look at all these new paintings. You're really getting good.
The recent resurgence of more dark, serious thrillers and less campy horror fests in the new century has been attracting A-list actors like Colin Farrell, Patrick Wilson, and Liv Tyler to the genre. So it was no surprise that Ethan Hawke agreed to flex his dramatic acting chops as a tortured crime writer who stupidly moves his family into the murder house he's investigating in this slasher horror.
The Millers, along with their younger son, were found stabbed inside their home.
After stumbling upon some 8mm film in the attic, he uncovers way more than he would have wanted. The effective mix of the all-too-real with the paranormal and a brooding, disquieting atmosphere with jump scares is what turned Sinister into this critical success. Number 5. VHS 2.
This guy's filming this.
Affirmative.
After the underground success of the first film, it seems like VHS may become a franchise of paranormal activity proportions. The sequel has the rare distinction of being immensely more creative than its low-budget and original predecessor, especially with regards to the overabused found footage style.
I want a copy of that footage.
Following a framed narrative where our group of victims stumbles upon and watches a stack of very disturbing home movies. It nevertheless brought back the horror anthology film, along with other franchises like the ABCs of Death, and gave up-and-coming directors more freedom to express themselves. Number 4. Insidious. The writer-director team of the Saw franchise needed a new direction and new blood for the horror industry this decade.
Oh my God.
What they created was a massively successful new franchise, a new trend of big-budget supernatural thrillers, and the death of gritty torture porn. The touching but disturbing story of a family coping with their son's coma, only to realize malevolent spirits were using his body as a conduit, was apparently just what the genre needed. Audiences were wising up, and gore and torture were trumped by atmosphere and a talented cast and crew with Insidious.
Please don't please come back to us, please. Oh my.
Number 3. Evil Dead.
I don't know what is wrong with you people, but there's something dead, and it reeks.
While some announcements of remakes scream blasphemy, this one received the original creator's blessing, and with good reason. Leaving behind any of the campy fun, this retelling similarities stop at the setup. A group of kids ends up in a cabin, reads a demonic passage they shouldn't have, and unleashes unspeakable evil. Although the nods to the original Sam Raimi classic are sprinkled throughout, this nightmare is demented originality through and through. With the poster boldly stating the most terrifying film you will ever experience, audiences have arguably not experienced something this unrelenting since the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Number 2. The Cabin in the Woods. Leave it to Joss Whedon to breathe new life into a dying genre.
That's not fair. I had zombies too.
Yes, you did. Yes, you had zombies. But this is zombie redneck torture family, see? They're entirely separate species.
The slasher film had lacked originality recently, but not since Scream had we seen the genre so deconstructed and scrutinized.
You like pain?
With a setup that is all too familiar, as a group of diverse teens ends up in a creepy cabin surrounded by fog, not only is nothing what it seems in this Drew Goddard-directed flick, it's also unlike anything you've ever experienced.
They made us choose. They made us choose how we die.
Though The Cabin in the Woods does have comedic elements, it has enough originality to fill 30 other horror flicks and inside jokes to make any fan drool.
Oh, come on!
Before we unearth our top pick, here are a few honorable mentions.
¡Tú no sabes lo que es tener miedo!
Number 1. The Conjuring.
We are beyond terrified. We don't know what's going on or what to do. Can you help us?
The 5 words that can make any horror movie even more terrifying than before. Based on a true story.
Well, we've been called demonologists. It's one name for us. Ghost hunters, paranormal researchers.
Kooks.
Wackos.
Ed and Lorraine Warren had been demonologists and paranormal investigators for decades, with famous cases like Annabelle the Doll and the Amityville House under their belts. And it took way too long before they got their own good movie.
Let's finish this together.
Another successful start to what may become a massive franchise from James Wan. Along with a top-notch cast, we follow the Warrens as they investigate the Perron family in 1970s Rhode Island, and the disturbing events that made millions of movie watchers skin crawl. Do you agree with our list?
Just so you know, I can't be your friend.
Which masterpiece from the first half of the 2010s is your favorite? For more thrilling top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.